Hello and welcome to Krackle Comics Weekly, episode 37 for the week of October 9th, 2020. I'm Mike alongside
Daniel
and Vincent.
Boys, we have like 15 books to get to this week. It's a giant stack of books, which means it's all going to fall down. We're going to go deep down in the ether. But Vince, you kick things off with American Ronin.
Yes, American Ronin #1. This is a book by AWA, Artists, Writers, and Artisans. We tried their weird JMS pandemic book right as the pandemic started. Was not a big fan of that. So I'm trying this out. This is by Peter Milligan and ACO. So there is a main character who is referred to as a Ronin, whatever that means in this context. He's in Hong Kong, and this is near future. It's not clear how far in the future. There's all super mega corporations, even more so than now. Hyper rich dudes that are weirdos, all kinds of stuff like that. He does some sleuthing and manipulation to get some DNA from one of these like super duper rich people, and then shoots the DNA into his arm, and he has some genetic engineering or powers or something where he like absorbs the guy's memories and feelings and things like that, and then calls him on the phone and convinces the rich guy to jump out a window to kill himself. And along the way, there's some toe licking involved. He gets the guy's DNA by convincing a woman that the guy is chasing after to like wear fake toenails and have him lick her toes. So then he gets the DNA from the fake toenails. That's very strange, but it's a little funny to have a panel of someone licking toes in a comic book. The art by ACO, it's very solid, but it's not that flashy. Whereas what I was expecting, and one of the major things that I know him from, probably the best thing he's done, is he did a Nick Fury series with James Robinson that looked really freaking amazing. I'm going to pin most of the difference probably down on the colorist, though granted, maybe that kind of style wouldn't work on this book. The concepts are kind of interesting, but not enough for me to continue here. It's a standard like 2.5 out of 5 or something like that.
And then the one of the big Marvel releases this week, Amazing Spider-Man number 49 or Amazing Spider-Man number 850, as it's proudly displayed on the cover. This is Nick Spencer, Ryan Ottley, Humberto Ramos, and Mark Bagley. And then there's like 3 backup features, but I'm just gonna stick to the main story here. And this is the one you've all been waiting for, as we've been building up to it, which seems taking forever, but we're finally here. Spider-Man must team up with the Green Goblin as the Sin Eater tears through Ravencroft, and Spidey and Norman have to put their differences aside for now, as they have to take down they got to take down the Sin Eater, who's now souped up like Juggernaut after he got hit with that soul shotgun that Sin Eater's been using. And the rest of the Spider characters look on waiting for their time to intervene, as Madam Web has showed them that Gobby's eventually going to kill Spider-Man, but is this that future going to play out? They're going to pick and choose, and Gwen's just like, instead of all sitting around here, maybe we should just put it to a vote. The issue is split up into 3 chapters, with each one drawn by a different artist. Ottley's on the first chapter, Ramos is on the second part called The Debt, and Bagley on the third, which is titled Your Choice. And then in the part 2, Norman has to rescue Spider-Man after some debris collapses on him, saying that this is his debt repaid to him, after making reference to when Spider-Man saved him all the way back at like one of their first encounters when they first learned each other's identities. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what issue of Amazing Spider-Man that is, but I'm sure Vince or Dan can proudly correct me when we throw it open to all of them. But Spider-Man decides to sacrifice himself near the third part, as they get to like this, Norman's got a secret lair, and he has to, there's like this giant like puddle of goo or water or whatever, and he's just like, well, I'll force him to keep down here and I'll sacrifice myself. But he's able to like get free, hoping that Green Goblin's going to save him. He's like, nope, I already paid you my debt back in chapter 2, man. So it looks like, oh, Spider-Man's going to die, but nope, saved by Gwen Stacy and the rest of the Spider family, which that feels weird to say. Let's just call them the spider characters. And I'm just remembering they got like a new name, I guess, back in like 48, but I don't even remember it anymore. But they all pile into this like tram thing that's going to take him into the Hudson. Very reminiscent of like the 90s animated cartoon. I think I remember when he was fighting Green Goblin. Kind of the same scenario of how they make the exit out of there. But this is where Norman starts, getting under Pete's skin because he heard Pete scream Gwen when she came in. He's like, oh, this must be Gwen Stacy. And like, oh, we're going to get acquainted. And he starts, getting under his skin. And this is where Pete makes his choice as he, punches Norman out of the thing as it's leaving. And he leaves him for the Sin Eater to get him. And then we, cap this off with Kindred, rising up out of the ground saying, hey, he understands that decision. But the dead never stay buried, and he's coming for Peter Parker. And that is the end of Amazing Spider-Man number 850, 49, whatever you want to call it. And sadly, also, this is the end for Ryan Ottley on this book, as he tweeted out today that this is his final issue. He started as the artist on number 1 back in 2018, and this is now issue 49. So, I think we'll get into it very, slightly here, but it was, over 50 issues, I think, if you count like the HU issues and like the other, point system issues that we saw in the series since 2018. They've been cranking out this book nonstop. Probably one of the hardest books to write for. And in today's age of comics, I don't think there's any chance that any writer could have done 55 straight issues on this, monthly basis. But Ryan Ottley bows out after 20 issues, maybe not even 20 issues because, he only did like 1/3 of a book here. But sad to see him go. And I know Patrick Gleason's taking on the next arc where it looks like Doctor Strange is coming in. But for the most part, I pretty much enjoyed this. It wrapped up fine, though I'm ready to finally get into the Kindred stuff as we set up like the big, are we nearing the finale of Spencer's run? I have no idea. But thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man number 850?
I'm really surprised that they even decided to poke into the whole thing with Gwen and Norman. That was really, really cringe for me, I felt. And I'm just glad that it's probably going to stay there and not get revisited again. But major props to the group for actually wanting to include that in here. But no, this was a pretty rewarding story, I thought. Sin Eater's Juggernaut looked a little weird in times. Like, it just like having like the skin in there. It looked really creepy. I wasn't a big fan of that. But yeah, like the classic. I think, did you mention that they alluded to the Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut storyline too with the concrete?
No, but I guess that works too.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool too. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I thought it was pretty solid anniversary issue.
Basically, every time we talk about Spider-Man, I kind of say how I'm not really into it anymore. So I've just got mostly complaints on this issue. This is not number 850. Dual numbering is stupid. You can't have 49 and 850, and the next issue is 50. It's not 851, so this is not 850. If you want to hype up the anniversary, you have to stay with the number, and that's how they've done it almost every other time. When Amazing Spider-Man hit, I don't know what was that. Well, no, I guess they just flopped over to what was that, 500 during the JMS run? Whichever number it was.
500. They switched
kept with it. The same with Daredevil. I think that was 600 when they switched back over. Thor may have been 600 as well. I don't know. If you want to hype up the dumb anniversary number, then stay with it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's a false anniversary issue. We get an all-time double-page splash here from Ottley. I think that it's a really great 2 pages. I'm gonna, miss him drawing Spider-Man. I think he's a perfect artist for Spider-Man. He has a really kinetic feel. They always gave him great colorists on the book. He has a lot of the similar energy from certain other artists that are, all-time Spidey artists, like a bit of a Ringo in him, even though his line is a bit more like hard edge or like jagged, or I'm not great at explaining art, but he reminds me a bit of a Ringo. It's sad to see him go. he didn't have a run. He drew 20 issues, give or take, over 2 years, which, you know, if this was a normal comic book, that would be a normal comic book. But they pump out, you know, sometimes like every once in a while, there's probably 3 of these every month. And so the fact that he never did more than 5 issues in a row, it's just not a run. He drew 20 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, but that's not a run to me. So I mean, that's just like the weird, shitty like situation of this title and comics publishing nowadays. Like, where does, you know, ultimately when all is said and done, where does Ryan Ottley rank in the pantheon of Spider-Man artists? The fact that he, you know, never had an extended stretch, that he had so many things in between him, that it was only 20 issues total. I mean, he doesn't crack very high on the list for me. And so you guys are talking about how, you know, they touch on the moment between Gwen and Norman, which I don't want to see that. That's, you know, cringy, whatever. But why is she here in the first place? She's not even from this Earth. This is not some multiversal event. You know, when she shows up in Spider-Verse or Spider-Geddon or whatever, there's an explanation. You know, there's the Inheritors going on, and there are dimensions at stake and everything like that. This is, honestly, I don't even 100% understand this story still. Sin Eater's around, and for some reason, every Spider character is involved.
Well, not to interrupt you, but you did bow out for like 3 issues.
Well, yeah, but still. So she's not even from here. And I know there was like some dumb status quo in her last series where she was like going to school on Earth 616 for stupid reasons.
Oh.
But that series, I'm pretty sure, was canceled like 10 months ago. And I assume maybe they got rid of that. Why is she in this book? I like Spider-Gwen as a comic book series in her own thing.
Well, she makes more sense being here than Spider-Woman does. I'll say that.
Well, yeah, that's another issue. But just the fact that they highlight Spider-Gwen here, I chose to as well. But yeah, I mean, I kind of give up on this book again. I already have, but I've read a couple issues for specific reasons. Though the backup stories are pretty fun. I think they're better than the main story. The Tradmore story has some fucking dope art. Really awesome.
That's the only one I liked. I didn't like Chris Boccello, Zardon, his story. I think it didn't work. But I like Tradmore seeing doing interiors in an Amazing Spider-Man comic. Well, that was cool. But this isn't, by the way, I just want to say, this isn't the end for Ottley at Marvel. He says he has something planned later in the year. He can't announce it yet, but he's excited about it. So I'm curious to see what other avenue he moves on to. It'll be exciting to see wherever he goes, because he's one of the best artists in comics working today. But we'll see where Spencer takes this. It looks like I think Doctor Strange is coming, so that's going to be fun with Patrick Gleason. But I think the Spider characters are staying around for whatever's happening with Kindred or something. So we'll wait and see what happens. But Dan, we have another Spider-Man book this week, and we're going to use Spider-Man loosely on the second one.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, he's literally in like 5 panels or whatever you said he is. So, anyways, getting into our next issue here, we have Spider-Man Marvel's Snapshot #1, written and drawn by Howard Chaykin, with colors by Jesus Arbutov. Our story opens in a subway where we see 2 men kind of walking around, with one of them using like gauntlets provided by the Tinkerer, apparently. And he's holding up an ATM. He's kind of like, oh, let's go back and we can get this money out of here. And as they're walking through the subway, they see Spider-Man fighting like some robot. And the fight actually sends something like throwing at the ATM and breaks it. So they're like, oh, let's get out of here. And we then kind of get introduced to our main character of the story, which is Victor Hollander, who is like he's like kind of like a cat burglar thief kind of thing, kind of messes around with his friend Ronnie here. And he also likes collecting like little statues and like painting them and doing stuff like that, which is weird, I guess. I guess I really shouldn't say weird because I collect Legos and stuff. Anyway, so Vic and his friend Ronnie go drinking, and they go to a bar and they meet up with Ronnie's sister, Vivi. And I guess I don't know how you say that. I guess it's Viv. I don't know. It's short for Vivian, I guess. So anyway, Victor starts dating her, and he like stops doing all his like little crimes and stuff, and tries to reform himself. When Ronnie continues to try to go after like these heists and stuff like that with the Tinkerer's gauntlets, and kind of like casually killing someone as well. Like one of the guys that he's working with, he accidentally drops like a crate on him and kills him. So that's kind of weird. And but yeah, like so we fast forward a few months later, and Ronnie actually goes to this like bar where Vivi and Vic are both working at the bar at the same time, which I thought was like a little uncomfortable, but that's a little weird. So he kind of confronts them. He's like, "What are you doing for your life? You're working in this bar," and they kind of explain to him that they're trying to get money to move out west to get away from New York. And Vivi finds out that later on that night, Vic actually like sneaks out and goes back to Ronnie and is like, "All right, get me in on this deal. I want to get some money so I can get out of this place." And Viv finds out, and she's like pissed at him about like wanting to go back to crime after all this time. And she kind of like gets like to a point where she's like, "Okay, well, actually, let's just do one more crime to get out of here," because Vic kind of convinces her like, we need this to be able to get away from all this, like, get out of this area that we're in. So we kind of like see them trying to like do like, a crime on like George Washington Bridge, and they use like an EMP to like hijack a truck or something. And then we kind of see Vic going back into crime again with Ronnie, where they actually run into Black Lash of all villains. So that's kind of cool. And Spider-Man shows up, because if you didn't know this by my awful recap of this book, it's a Spider-Man book, guys. So he shows up and beats up this Black Lash character. And Vic decides to leave crime TV, and that's the end of the issue. I know one of my co-hosts liked this issue, so I'll be interested to see how he defends it. But I did not like this issue at all. I mean, I also don't have background on this creator, so I don't really see where this is coming from. I wasn't really too interested in the characters. I would say about halfway through the book, I kind of had some interest. Like the scene where they show like Vivi and like Vic walking like through the different seasons, I thought that was kind of cute, and it kind of like brought some scope to it. But then it just got to a point where I was like, I don't really care about this anymore. So yeah, and there's no number 2 issue. I thought this was a continuing series, but it is just a snapshot one shot. So what do you guys think?
If this didn't have the word Spider-Man on it, it'd probably fit better. This is the first of these snapshot issues that I don't think worked, in the sense that I think it's the most disjointed out of all of them. Normally, it's keying in and giving highlights to a specific time about a character specifically. The most comparing one to this would be the Captain America one, where it keyed in on a kid that Captain America saved. But Captain America was also, we saw him like the two differencing sides of, when he was working at AIM, when Captain America, fighting the Mad Bombs. But this was almost all certainly about this character, and Spider-Man really only shows up 2 times, no more than probably 5 to 8 panels on the page. And if these snapshot issues were supposed to be, exploring like a certain time in that character's history, it just doesn't work for what the snapshots line is supposed to be. But Vince, I'm sure we can throw it to you, and you and I can bark back and forth like angry people in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I don't remember exactly how they announced this thing, but this story, and if I'm thinking about certain other snapshot issues, if I remember them correctly, it could be like, hey, let's take a look at this major character from a certain time period. But given Snapshot, knowing Kurt Busiek's other work, looking at Marvels, which this comes out of, this story and some of the other snapshots are really more of an Astro City type of story, where it is focusing on someone who's ancillary to the title character, or someone who's not ancillary at all, which is the case here. And maybe this one just takes it, way farther than all the others, obviously. I mean, first of all, again, Dan doesn't know Chaykin that much, but if you do know Chaykin, you couldn't expect in 2020 Chaykin to do 20 plus pages of Spider-Man swinging through New York. He just there's no chance that he was going to do that and play it straight. I thought this was really fun. And in a sense, it's not focusing on a period of Spider-Man, but with the little hints, the little moments of the superheroics that you do see in the background, and some of the commentary between Ronnie and Vic, you're essentially tracing through the Silver Age into the Bronze Age, because they're talking about superheroes arriving on the scene, and then you have they talk about Turk stealing Stiltman and Daredevil beating the shit out of them. Later on, they're like when they run away, when Spidey comes up on Blacklash and gives them the chance to run away, they're like, Vic makes the argument like, what if that was the Punisher? And then of course, like 10 pages earlier, back, however many months or years before that was, you saw a Punisher van, just a little Easter egg. And then when they're navigating, not going on the bridge, it's Power Man and Iron Fist fighting some villains. So there's just it's still a Marvel Universe story. It's just not focusing on it. I'll give it that there's some false advertising here. But you're coming to these snapshot issues for the creators and not for the characters. So, it's still in Alex Ross, or I think it's Alex Ross. It's still an Alex Ross Spider-Man cover, so there's definitely going to be schmucks that pick it up. But if you know the credits of this issue, you're reading this issue for Howard Chaykin, not for Spider-Man.
Okay. No, I can totally see that. I think though, I want to see if you agree with this. Remember when Marvel Comics Presents was running, and the second story was usually like one of those decade stories?
Yeah.
I think this story would have worked better for one of those than a Marvel Snapshot.
Well, that's the thing, is I don't 100% remember or know the intended purpose of Marvel Snapshots.
Well, most of them, have focused on the characters. So like Submariner one was all about Submariner, and then the John.
Well, it wasn't Submariner. Well, it was, but Submariner had a focal point character in relation to Submariner. It was that woman. I don't remember some of the others off the top of my head.
Human Torch. That one was his.
That was the town.
It was the town and his high school girlfriend. And then Captain America was the kid he saved. The Cyclops. Yeah, Cyclops was all about Cyclops.
Yeah. But of course, that one, and I was critical in that instance. That one, was very light on the super heroics. And if anything, it did focus on Cyclops, but Cyclops was essentially the civilian character in the Phil Sheldon role.
Yeah.
Looking at Mr. Fantastic and Iron Man. So even though that Cyclops was the star there, that one's actually close in that vein as well. But and also as far as the art style and his kind of tropes, Chaykin is kind of a love it or hate it guy. Right. I like Chaykin. The next Snapshots issue it's Avengers, and it's set during the McLeany, Byrne, Perez era. So I think that's around issue 170 to 200 or so, and the creative team is going to be Barbara Randall, and formerly known as Barbara Kiesel, and Staz Johnson. So I think we'll probably all definitely read that one at least, and we'll see how it compares.
Well, I've been reading all of these, and this is the only one that hasn't hit with me so far. But as an interesting bookend before we move on,
I'll have one more comment. If you want to read a straight story of Spider-Man versus Blacklash, pick up Marvel Team Up number 145.
All right, and then as the full bookend, we did get the chance to see Howard Chaykin draw more Spider-Man, 2 episodes ago on the Retro with that Marvel Team Up book. So, we're not clamoring for more Howard Chaykin Spider-Man. We just saw it.
Very different Chaykin as well, as we commented.
Very different era.
All right. So, getting into our next issue this week, we have Black Widow number 2, written by Kelly Thompson, art by Elena Casagrande, colors by Jordi Belair. So, in California, Clint and Bucky continue to spy on Natasha as she is living with this random dude. I think his name's Steve, in a really nice house. So Clint has the bright idea of just walking up to Nat in the garage while she's tinkering with stuff, and she's singing a song. I'm not too sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Correction. The baby's name is Steve. The husband's name is not Steve. So sorry about that. So yeah. So Clint kind of just walks up and starts talking to her, and she's like, "How you doing?" and all this stuff, and he's trying to get her to like hopefully give him a hint that she's being like held hostage or something. And as he's talking to her, he notices that her child actually comes out, like a baby comes out into like the garage, and that really throws Clint for a loop too, because Nat has only been missing for like a few months, so there's no way she could have already had a kid by then. And he's like, he tells Bucky later on that that kid looked exactly like her, so he kind of just like leaves and then heads back into the woods to kind of keep spying on him. And we find out that Nat and her husband, I guess, are going into the city for something. We don't really get to see what it is. Meanwhile, Arcade speaks to like a hidden figure about attacking Clint and Bucky since they're kind of nearby this, and they don't want them screwing it up. And the hidden figure is kind of just like, no, we don't want to attack them, because if Nat's around, she might get freaked out by that, and it might compromise what they've done to her, which we don't really get a good idea of what that is yet. In the city, we see Nat's husband kind of just like, they kiss, and then Nat's husband just gets into a taxi and just drives off. And Natasha's just walking around the downtown like area where she sees like a woman getting like burglared, I guess, or getting like robbed. And she steps in to save the burglary. We get a really cool 2-page splash page of Natasha just like kicking butt of like all the different like criminals and stuff like that. So that's a really cool piece to see there. And she eventually comes home to comfort her son and say goodbye to the babysitter, who is, the son's sound asleep, and she's kind of just like watching him sleep. And we see some like dude kind of creeping through like a TV screen as Nat kind of goes into this room, pulls out. Oh, it is Arcade. My bad. Okay. Correction again. The person that's creeping on Natasha is Arcade. Did not know that because the guy was wearing a mask, so I didn't know that was Arcade or not. But we then see Natasha unconsciously like assemble a bomb through the parts of a like little like walkie-talkie baby, like walkie-talkie type of thing. So that's a little weird, and that's kind of where we end our issue. Like Natasha's pretty much just like, holy shit, I just made a bomb and it's about to blow up. So this story, again, kind of holding some stuff close to the vest here. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I think this series is on a good track. And Vince, I have to ask you, is that really Arcade? Because like the guy's wearing a mask.
It's Red Guardian.
Well,
okay, that's what I thought it was. I didn't want to say it because I wasn't sure if it was Red Guardian.
Well, Arcade is the guy talking to the people on the screens. The person watching her over, whatever, network he's looking. It was the reveal in the first issue. The wiki does say Red Guardian's in this, but I don't remember where he was.
He's the guy in the mask that looks like Red Guardian.
Well, no, I thought Arcade was talking to someone.
Oh, no, the reveal at the very end of this issue is Red Guardian.
Okay.
So maybe Red Guardian is behind Arcade, but the guy who's looking at the screens is Arcade.
Yeah, I know that. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think this series is pretty good, and we'll see. Definitely on for a third.
I'm highly enjoying it. The art's great. Also, props to the art team here for including hearing aids on Hawkeye. That's an A+ inclusion there. But no, this is like a full out like, all right, what are we doing here? Like, the questions keep coming, and you're wanting left more. And fantastic art team with some really good writing team here. So this is really, really good. Also, better not Brian Hitch. Better cover this time by Adam Hughes than the first issue. Because that first issue Adam Hughes cover wasn't great. This one was better.
By a little bit.
By a little bit, but it was a lot better than issue 1.
Yeah, there's some fun Truman Show shit with Arcade. Obviously, we don't know fully what's going on. The art's great. I like the dress that Nat wears. It's a nice looking dress, and she wears it nicely. And then that fight scene is pretty nice in terms of the art and the storytelling. I just like, is this? I don't know. It's hard to say, especially in today's market. Like, if this doesn't last more than one arc, how much Black Widow are we going to get on the page? So I'm interested to see that.
Well, as the movie got delayed until next year, we'll see what Marvel does to position the character. Does this, are we in for a scenario where the book, ends after 6 issues and gets relaunched with the same team again? Because we've seen that before too. So we'll see what happens, and then the cops are after Vince again. Bad things happen in Philadelphia, I hear.
Jeez.
Oh wow, he's got siren. We got sirens going on.
Vince, are you sure you're okay? Are you safe?
Yeah, I'm fine.
11 p.m. Do you know where your kids are?
No, I don't know where my kids are, but that's a discussion for another day.
Good.
All right, we done with Black Widow then? We done with police sirens?
I think it was actually an ambulance, for what it's worth.
All right, well, hopefully everyone stays safe. But DCeased, Dead Planet number 4. This is Tom Taylor, Trevor Hairsine. Constantine has brought Mr. Miracle back to Ivy's hideout as they hatch a plan to head to New Genesis to get Metron in the Mobius chair. So their plan is to trade Metron Madame Xanadu's crystal ball so he can see into the future in exchange for the chair. And if Cyborg's able to sit on it, he'll be able to learn the cure for the anti-life virus. And, they're going to try to set the world right. That's the plan. Batman has to say goodbye to Superman and Wonder Woman, hoping that they both return. Also, this scene confirms that Damian is in a relationship with Cassie Sandsmark, who's now Wonder Woman, because all the kids have now become the legacy characters in this future. Dinah goes with them as well, as Dr. Fate's going to look after the zombified Ollie Queen. They're going to hope to bring him back if they get this cure. And then we get to New Genesis, where we get to see Tom Taylor make reference to Tom King's Mr. Miracle with Orion. We get to see the standing scene. He makes full reference to. But Scott visits Highfather, who is looking after his son, who was born, and then he gave to Highfather after Barda's death because he didn't feel like he could raise him, and he wanted to keep him safe there. And gaining advice to take him back and see his true fathers, one day he most likely will rule New Genesis, and to get the leadership and experience from his true father, and not from his uncles like Light Ray and Orion and Highfather himself. But they're able to get to they're able to find Metron and get the Mobius chairs. They make the switch, and Metron just he looks to the future through the crystal ball and is just sees some horrible shit and just pieces out. Cyborg's able to get the cure, and they're like, well, something bad's coming if Metron doesn't even want the chair back. And they head back through a boom tube back to Earth. And boom, in the remains of Apocalypse, Darkseid pops out. So Darkseid isn't dead, and he goes to New Genesis and basically destroys New Genesis at the end of this. So at the end of this, issue 4, I think this is of 7 issues, we know that we got Darkseid coming, and we have Raven's dad, and geez, I can't even remember what Raven's dad's name is, but so we got both of them coming to destroy the world at the end of this. So I don't see a scenario where everyone just isn't dead completely by the end of this. But Trigon and Darkseid make for a pretty deadly combo when we get through this. So this will be a fun ramping ending, as we got 3 issues left here. And then I'll throw it to Dan for Firepower number 4.
Yes. So getting into Firepower number 4, probably one of my favorite series right now coming out, and I think that's the same sentiment for a lot of my other co-hosts as well. But so Firepower number 4, written by Robert Kirkman with art by Chris Samney. So Owen and Kelly are still kind of struggling with Owen still thinking about his previous love, Zan. So she was the one that was kind of with him at the temple, and I believe she perished. So he's kind of still kind of harping on with that. And obviously it's creating an issue with him and his current wife, Kelly. So meanwhile, while that's going on, we see the Order of the Flaming Fist training, and one of these guys in a red robe or something freaking out because he's you guys aren't done training. Like, go back and train some more. So that's kind of weird. The next day, Owen sees his son practicing martial arts in the yard before school, and he kind of goes up to he goes up to Kelly and tries to like kind of make like light of it, and Kelly's just like, "Bye, I'm so upset at you. I hate you." And he's like, "Oh, damn, this sucks." So, who else to talk to about marital issues than your father? So he goes to get lunch with his dad and get some kind of helpful advice. His dad kind of goes on this like long diatribe about this like analogy of like snakes and elephants and stuff like that, and he's kind of just like, anyways, just go talk to your wife. And yeah, we kind of come back to their house where Kelly comes in and sees Owen training the kids in the backyard, where Owen kind of tells her that like, now we're going out to dinner. So that's kind of cool. And as they're going out to dinner, we see members of the Order of the Flaming Fist like in the, I believe that's who they are. They're kind of like hiding in the tree. So that's a really cool like full page. I think it's like a full page spread. I'm not sure if it's like if it's a half a page or whatever. But at dinner, Owen admits to his love for Zan, but also explains that the love he had there with her was never real, and kind of goes on all this stuff about like all the real things he's been able to do with Kelly, with raising the family and stuff like that. And it kind of wins her back. And at that same time, Kelly kind of tells him that he has something on his shirt. So as he gets up to go to the bathroom to wipe off his shirt, he is like attacked with like a chain that goes around his throat. And we see some really cool action sequences. Great art again by Chris Samney, kind of showing Owen using his flaming fist powers, and he's able to fend off the attacker. Just as he's able to come back to the table, he sees Kelly being held hostage by another one of the members of the group, and that's kind of where our issue ends. So again, another great issue here. Really, really excited to keep reading the series and to see where it goes. And yeah, definitely pick of the week material from me. What about you guys?
Well, I highly doubt you choose anything else as your pick of the week. I just want to state that first. No, it continues to be great. Kirkman finds a way to handle his characters very, very maturely in an adult way that makes very much sense. And it's a very adult conversation here that he has with his wife. And I like how real the characters feel and how kinetic. Even though there's not a lot of action on the page, the color here and Sammy's art and the conveying of emotions, like he's just sitting on the couch, it's just blue and pinks because obviously he's not feeling great. And then we get more warm colors of like oranges when they're reconnecting back at dinner. So you can just look at that, and on that level, it's great there. But then we still get like kick-ass fight scenes like near the end of this, and we know the next issue it's going to be probably Kelly and Owen fighting. And we got to see him use the fireballs here when he gets they take him down when he's going to the bathroom. That's great. No, this is like easily far and away one of the best books being put out right now. And after this kind of first arc, I don't know if I'm going to stick with it because I might just be like, and this might just be a way of reading Robert Kirkman comic books. I'm like, all right, I have my fill. I'm just going to read this all as the trades come out or the hardcovers or compendiums later on, just because that's the way I like reading Robert Kirkman's comic books, because I like having, the big fill all at once. That's kind of how I've read Walking Dead and how I've read Invincible. So I might do the same here. We'll wait and see with that. But damn, this is a really good issue.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think I might do the same thing as you.
Yeah, the one thing though is a lot of people read and trade for Kirkman, obviously, but I think he actually fits that perfect balance. And I've kind of commented on previous issues of this series where it does. Obviously, if you read 200 pages of this in a row, that would be fantastic. But you're saying that out of preference, really. You're not saying that out of it would work better in trade, because that is the case.
No, it works great as an issue, or it works great collected. It's really good either way. But because I think I'm coming from a stance of it's so good, I want so much more now than just 22, 35 pages, depending on how long the issues are.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again that I think actually more than everything else we read for the most part, this actually works very well serialized as well. This is really good. You made some good points about the art. There's a couple scenes here where Samney does things with like facial expressions and emotions, which, to be honest, I mean, Samney is an amazing storyteller, but I don't necessarily immediately think of him as, you know, the faces guy, just because his style is a little bit more simpler and everything like that. But there were a couple of really impressive moments here, though. There is one panel, I think it's during the dinner scene, where she's like recoiling or like looking away for a second, and Owen, I think, is like getting out of his chair because he's, you know, she's reacted, so then he's reacting. But if you just pull that panel completely in isolation, it's almost like you could totally misinterpret it as a Hank and Jan moment. I'll pull the panel and send it to you guys later. But
Okay.
you can misinterpret it as him hitting her.
Well, that's out of context without reading it, but I would go as far to say, and I think this isn't like a hot take or an extreme hard take on this, but I think this is the best work of Samney's career we're seeing right now. Every issue has gotten better, and it's just built on the top of it. It is by far, to me, the best I've seen his art ever be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense because his style is so cartoony and, for lack of a better word, simplistic that, you know, once he fully established his style, it's not like his style is going to alter crazily. You know, like certain other artists where they're a lot more detail oriented or a lot more quote unquote skill based, you know, through their careers, their style is going to change because, you know, it's just more hours, you know, on your hands, on your eyes, everything like that. And also, you know, some people who have a super detailed style, they may go backwards because they realize, hey, I'm wasting my fucking time. But with Samney, you know, his just visually, his style, it's not going to sway a ton. But so for him, the years is just adding on, you know, more and more understanding of his storytelling and moment, and like the minute things that I was talking about, like the facial expressions and things like that. And so for him, I would say he's the kind of artist where he's only going to get better and better.
Yeah. And like, I can't say how much we applaud it. Not only does he excel in those action sequences, but the best parts are those intimate moments in conversation, still being able to play drama in just a conversation between a husband and wife, and then also have all this crazy action happening at the same place. And they're both equally fantastic. And you can make a case that, you know, just the conversations are better than the action in different aspects. It's really just a tremendous, you know, product that, you know, comes out here. And by the way, the guy doesn't stop working. He's doing Battober on his Instagram page every day. He's got another Batman image coming out. It's crazy. The guy doesn't stop working at all, which I don't understand. The guy that must like never sleep.
Well, Battober's not work. That's play.
Yeah.
All right.
It does seem that they have a backlog of issues already in the can, but like, I mean, you know, they're sticking to the schedule. But Vince, you got more books?
Yes. Getting It Together, #1. This is the first issue from Image Comics. This is written by Sina Grace. I believe it's Sina. I'm less sure about the co-writer Omar Spahi. Art by Jenny D. Fine. There's a couple pages by Sina Grace as well. The idea here is that it's supposed to be just a book about young people just doing their thing. Like they're in their probably late 20s, early 30s. They all live in San Francisco. And it's just that. I mean, I saw it kind of described as like Friends. And I've never watched a ton of Friends, but also what I have watched, I don't really like Friends. So I don't know how close it is, but you know, it's just a drama / a little bit of a sitcom-y thing about a bunch of young people, which is, you know, not a kind of story and genre you see in comic books, or at least mainstream, a lot. So it's interesting to see this coming from Image. We open with 2 perspectives on a breakup. This couple is broken up. They had a open relationship, or they were establishing one, but they didn't fully clarify what that meant to both of them. So there was a misunderstanding, and they're in a rough patch. And those 2 characters are Sam and Lauren. And Jack is kind of caught in the middle because he is Lauren's brother, but he's also Sam's best friend, or one of his best friends. Lauren is in a band called Nip Slip, which is a nice, clever name for a band. Jack happens to be gay, and so he goes on a date, and later on it turns out that the guy he went on a date with is like basically just a grifter. He's an asshole. Sam is Jack is a graphic designer, and his date, the grifter guy, which doesn't matter because he's not going to be in this book anymore, he's a photographer. Sam does some kind of like video editing work, and maybe for like the city or something. He mentions how he's like editing together. It sounds like some kind of PSA about using condoms, and or maybe it's a nonprofit or something. And but the new date guy, he tells a story about waking up to someone sounding in bed next to him, and I'll just dare our viewers to Google that, sounding. But he knows the guy. Jack knows the guy that he's talking about who was sounding. He's like a barista that he's friends with. So then they talk, and yeah, this guy's a grifter. And they mention it's just interesting to note that PrEP is mentioned in this, and PrEP is a medication that primarily gay people use to drastically lower your chance of contracting HIV. Things proceed, the grift is exposed, and at the end there's like the band has a show, and so everyone converges on this event. So the grifter guy, he gets his stuff back from him. The exes finally meet up and they have a little hug, but they're not back together. And that's pretty much where things end. So we get introduced to most of our main characters and their relationships to each other. This is pretty good. I'm not certain if it'll hold my attention in a monthly format, just because, again, not super used to this genre coming in a monthly comic. But I'm going to keep going for now, and I'd recommend people check it out. There's a music playlist in the back as extras, and apparently also the fake band Nip Slip somehow has some music recorded, as a stunts for this. So it seems like, they're putting a lot of effort into it, and this is a really interesting, unique book, and I'm going to follow with it a little bit more because, I appreciate this kind of diversity in more ways than one in the market and in my reading.
No, I read his last book, or at least part of it, Ghosted in LA. He's really carving out some really interesting and really fun stuff in the indie market here.
I think Cena's like breakout thing by himself, it's a book called, now I can't think of what it's called. It's something like Lil Dead Boyfriend or Lil something. I think it's it's Lil Depressed Boy, I think. And he wrote and drew that. And that was similar to this. It was more, just drama based. And then, he had
he does drama really, really well. So no, I'll look forward to seeing this, come out when it's collected. That's kind of how I've read his stuff. I think it reads better that way, but nice to hear that, he's got another win in the column for us in his books. But we'll transition to some, spooky fun time Halloween stuff with Legend of the Swamp Thing Halloween Spectacular #1, which I wasn't too hot on. This is like, I feel like this is like 80 pages. This wasn't 100, but this is like 6 stories that kind of interconnect with Swamp Thing, all bookended by Ram V and Mike Perkins at the heart of the trees and then at the heart of the man. We have Philip Kennedy Johnson, Vita Ayala, Julian Tile, John Timms with him on that one, and then the two with Ram V and Mike Perkins. I thought Mike Perkins' art was great. I liked Ram V's take on Swamp Thing. The rest of them I didn't really enjoy. I liked the No Sign of the Enemy, the story with the Japanese soldier who doesn't think World War II's over, as he's got Swamp Thing, communicating with him through a boot, trying to tell him that he needs to move on and that the war isn't over, as he's kind of going crazy and losing his mind. I thought that one was interesting, but the rest of them, Swamp Thing doesn't really play a factor in them at all. And something here just didn't hit. But it's nice to see that Swamp Thing, as he doesn't have really a book right now, at least gets a Halloween special. But Vince, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm a big Swamp Thing fan. That doesn't come up a ton on this show because there's no Swamp Thing book
exactly
to read. But I poked into a little snippet of Ram V's run on Justice League Dark, and there was a swampy-centric story that I read there, and I really liked that. So I was interested to jump into this. That's definitely the standout, his two stories, or the bookends. Mike Perkins' art is great. Those stories are good, but I wasn't into much of the rest either. The thing is that this is kind of, I guess they thought that this made sense to embrace the anthology concept because, I mean, there are Swamp Thing stories, but they're not Swamp Thing stories because this leans into the whole Parliament of Green part of the lore and the idea that, there's Swamp Things all throughout time and all throughout space and everything like that across countries. So, except for the very beginning, not even the end, because the end, it's a different Swamp Thing as well in the second Ram V story. So really only the first, if even that, is, capital S, capital T, the Swamp Thing, quote unquote, Al Holland or lack of quotes, whichever, the current continuity is. So this is just, different takes on Swamp Thing-like beings or, however you want to interpret the lore. And that's not really, obviously, I mean, that's a thing, that's a general concept that Alan Moore, added, and then various other writers have, expanded that. Like Charles Soule had a lot of that, where there's, a bunch of Swamp Things. But it's not my favorite part of it. I really just like the Swamp Thing. And if the lore is a backdrop and a backstory, cool. But I don't want to read about the Swamp Thing from Japan in 1943. That's not of interest to me. The art is nice on some of the stories, especially the story from Emma Rios and Christian Ward. But the scripts didn't really engage me and sometimes weighed it down. I thought the Vidi Ayala script, even though there were some interesting things in the script, it was very it actually did kind of have some things to say, but it was just very, very extensive. Too many words. And then at the very end of the story, there's just as part of the story, as part of the, wrapping it up, someone was reading a newspaper that is labeled as $2, but also is talking about the guy who dies in the end, he went to Jupiter as an astronaut and at some point made his way all the way back to Earth. And even if Elon Musk goes absolutely insane over the next 10 years and gets a shitload of investment, there's no way in any scenario that by the time we get astronauts to Jupiter and back, that there will be newspapers, potentially in general, but definitely not for $2. So that's my nitpick.
Yeah, it's a little weird. And, continuing with weird, you got another issue of Lost Soldiers this week.
Yes, the series by Alice Cott and Luca Casalanguida. This is a fucking trip again. So the standoff that ended the last issue, on the border between cartel and military guys and stuff like that, it erupts here into a gunfight, then a car chase, then a hand-to-hand fight. The main character gets into the fight with the guy who he didn't like all the way back from Vietnam, stabs him, and I guess he blacks out or something, but then also that guy seemingly didn't die. The two main guys, somehow both of them make it back home, but the main character, his family has left him, so there's some dream sequences of happiness in a different color tone and everything like that. And he's just a cranky old bastard, and he still wants to kill the guy who he had some beef with in Vietnam. And I don't even think we 100% got the explanation on what the hell happened, at least yet. And his friend just gives up on him. He's like, "You're fucking crazy. I'm not. I have a family. Yours may have left you, but not my case. So have fun." The script here is, like previous issues, it's trying to lean into a more of a poetic deal, and it just makes it even more of a mindfuck. But the art is still fantastic. The colors are just insane in this book. There's even a page, and it had to have been tweaked with digitally. This book is obviously colored digitally and everything. But there's a page where I guess Luca must have drawn something, and then they use all kinds of distortion tools digitally, and it's a splash page, and it's just impossible to decipher. This book is crazy. I think it might only be 4 issues, so I might just finish it just to, again, kind of to see the art and see if I can remotely decipher it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to people, though. If you find it in a store, just flip through it and look at the pictures.
Over in Thor number 8, this is the Donny Cates, Aaron Cooter, Matt Wilson. This is the final part of Hammerfall, this little 2-part tale that's bookended before Nick Klein comes back. And the open sees the tale of Asgard's past, of all the kings as children trying to peek into the Book of Destiny and being denied as they aren't king yet. And you see flash to Thor as now he's king, but he can't even keep up with the pages. These like bright golden pages that are turning brighter and more black as the chapters are being deleted with the current events that have transpired with what's going on with the Black Winter and Thor and Mjolnir and all that. But the current issue being that Adam, this Oklahoma mechanic, now has the powers of Thor, as he was able to lift Mjolnir in the last issue. He's there with Iron Man and wondering what's going on. He launches an EMP that kind of kills all these cameras of reporter that's around them, which allows them to escape. And then Thor drops down to clear the air, and Tony isn't having any of it since Thor gave out the phone number, and so he tries to steal Mjolnir back and tries to basically try to fight him with it, going as far as he smacks him with it. But that's where Thor reminds him the last time that they were in Oklahoma. Thor kicked his ass, if you remember back in JMS's run, and he doesn't need the hammer as he's still a god as he starts making thunderclouds appear all around him, which makes Tony back down. It keys into just Cates takes away that this part of their relationship is that Thor and Tony are just kind of playful dicks to each other, which is pretty funny. I kind of like that dynamic with them. Thor, though, asking him, hey, if he can count on him in this impending battle that he sees in the future. And Tony's like, yeah, dude, I got your back. But also, maybe, tell me what's going on without giving out my phone number to everyone. And, they make their amends and he goes on his way. But Tony does tell him, hey, maybe you need to take a vacation after becoming king, as he's noticing that Thor is kind of being run rampant and he looks more tired than usual. And then, after, then he flies off. The rest of this focusing on Thor looking over Adam as he takes him flying around and showing him how the hammer works before having him smack the hammer on the ground, turning the powers off, as Adam he didn't really want the powers permanently. But he talks about how when Thor was, in Broxton, Oklahoma, back during the JMS era, and he had Asgard floating over it, he was incarcerated and he was locked up. So he couldn't, take part in what was going on, but he'd look outside his jail cell and just see the birds flying and wanting to be up there with them free. So he was thanked Thor, at least, he gave him that opportunity to live that experience. And he says, as a mechanic, maybe, simple problems of whatever he's feeling or experiencing might be just as simple as turning it off and turning it back on again. And we're left with Thor looking at a picture of Donald Blake in front of his family clinic, thinking that maybe it's time to bring Donald Blake back. And, he turns his powers off and brings Donald Blake back a little bit. Maybe he's able to clear up the issue that's happening with Mjolnir here. But I'm sure that's we'll look at that in the next arc as the cover for, I think, issue 9 will be it has Donald Blake on the cover. So not many people really use Donald Blake anymore. I know the direct comparison again is back to JMS, which was the last time we've seen this, but Donny Cates is pulling from what works, and one of the last I think there's been other successful small things on Thor. Jason Nerd did have the run for 7 years, and it has its ups and downs of whatever 7 year longer is going to have. But that JMS run is still hailed as one of the best, and that was the last time we really got to see Donald Blake. So I don't look at this as him just redoing JMS. I don't think that's not this at all, but he definitely is taking aspects from that and paying homage and continuing some threads there, which I do find interesting. Aaron Cooter's art with Matt Wilson's colors here, beautiful as always. I'd recommend Dan go back and read these 2 issues. It has some pretty fun Iron Man stuff in it that he might find entertaining. But as it is now, Thor continues to be one of the most kind of interesting, fun books that I'm reading per month here. But Vince, you're gonna take over the X of Swords recap in the X-Men corner this week's solo, as I bowed out last week.
Yeah, I'll try and get through this somewhat quicker. 10 of Swords, X of Swords, whatever the hell it's called. So we have 3 chapters this week, 3 issues, but there's really 2 stories here. So in Wolverine number 6 and X-Force number 13, both these issues have the exact same creative team. Ben Percy, you expect on both. These are both his ongoing books, but Victor Bogdanovich actually draws both of these issues. And obviously they're coming out the same week, so it'd be interesting to get the behind the scenes on how they figured out that scheduling wise. But Logan knows he needs the Muramasa blade. He tries to figure out who can help me with the clues. He fights Silver Samurai. He just beats the crap out of him. And Silver Samurai is kind of upset. He's like, I'm the sword guy. Like, you use the stupid sword sometimes in your like shitty like Daniel Way books and flashbacks that no one cares about. But like, I'm Silver Samurai. I have this sword all the time. I have armor. That's my whole thing. And so he's like, fuck you, Logan. But, he gives him a hint. Then from the other direction, we get introduced to a character named Solemn from Morocco. And he's also on the hunt, I guess, for the same sword. I don't know if this is how it works with all the swords. Like, are they supposed to beat each other to sword? I think it's only this situation. And in one of the text pages in this issue, Mad Jim Jaspers is mentioned, which is this very ridiculous, insane, like multiversal thing from Alan Moore's Captain Britain, and actually kind of ties into the origins of the names Earth 616 in the first place. I don't actually read the text pages in any X-Men books anymore, so I don't know if there was anything worthwhile there. When the hell it'll come up again, I don't really care. X-Force number 13 literally picks up exactly where the last issue left off, and it ignores the title completely. This is not an X-Force issue. This is literally only Wolverine appears here. No other characters from X-Force are here. But I guess they're both Percy books, so it works out a bit. He fights hand ninjas, but the hand ninjas are kind of weird. Like, he punches one of their masks off, and it's just like a skull underneath. And then he just kind of falls into hell. And when I say falls into hell, I mean he literally falls into a vat of lava. And then this doesn't make any sense. I hate this on multiple levels. So I hate the power creep of Wolverine and that he regenerates from everything. But more so, okay, he falls into lava, he's a skeleton. Theoretically, if Wolverine gets reduced to a skeleton, he can regenerate. But the skeleton, who again is bones, crawls out of this lake of lava and up onto this ledge so that he's then on the ground and can start regenerating. I mean, I know this is a comic book, but I don't know, there's these things called muscles and ligaments and tendons, and that's how we move. This is stupid on multiple levels. I fucking hate that version of Wolverine. And he runs into Solemn, who's also ends up in hell because they're looking for the same thing. The surprise here is that Solemn has adamantium skin, so they're kind of like, equal opposite forces. And it turns out Muramasa makes, I guess, a new Muramasa blade, and he actually makes 2. So they both get their swords, and they kind of make like some weird deal. And it's Logan essentially actually making the deal, but it's not explained what he had to sacrifice or what he promised in order to walk away with it. Now, third issue, second story, separate, Marauders number 13, written by Vidi Ayala and not Jerry Duggan, art by Matteo Loli. This is Storm getting her sword. So as we go along, Storm, she runs into Kitty, and Kitty's like, hey, let me help you. And Storm's like, no. And Kitty's like, are you sure? And Storm's like, yes. And there's some nice panels of key Storm moments in her development, like certain things that you'd expect, like her fight with Callisto and all kinds of stuff like that. We also then transition into an origin of vibranium and a bunch of Wakandan lore. And I think most of this is already established. I'm not 100% certain on that. But it turns out that the weapon she needs to grab, and I think it was implied through the riddle already, is related to Wakanda. And so she shows up, she talks to T'Challa's mom, and she talks to Shuri. T'Challa's not there at the moment. And she's like, all right, there's this weird thing going on. I need a sword. And they're like, all right, we have these 3, legendary Wakandan weapons. You can just borrow one of them. And she's like, I don't need those ones. I need the one, like the super ancient sword related to Black Panther. I think it's called Sky Killer, Skybringer, or something like that. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, if you touch that, it's just going to crumble the entire politics and status quo of Wakanda. People are going to rise up against us. Everything's going to go fucking insane. But just wait till T'Challa gets back and, we can talk further. So she has to sit and wait. She's set up in essentially like a hotel room. There's a really great conversation between her and Shuri, where Shuri, first of all, and I don't know if we knew this already, but Shuri notes that Wakanda has not signed the treaty with Krakoa, even though Wakanda doesn't persecute mutants and they're letting mutants go, but they haven't signed the treaty with all the economic and like legal things attached to it. And it's a really interesting conversation, actually. This is probably the best part of the book. Like Shuri and Storm go back and forth, kind of making their argument, and they're touching on their shared history and everything like that. But I guess Storm can't wait, so she sets off on a heist to get the sword. And Shuri, of course, shows up to stop her, and they have a little fight. And Storm, wins. And in the end, T'Challa does show up after all the alarms have gone off. And they have a little tense standoff, referencing their past relationship. And he's like, all right, whatever, Storm, just get the fuck out of here, essentially. And the Wakandans destroy their gate. I don't know. It's kind of weird because all of these characters have 3 days to get their swords. And this is like halfway into day 1. So, could Storm wait? Like, if she actually gives a little more explanation, does T'Challa go out of his way to actually show up and not make her wait, or show up faster? Because obviously he shows up here at the end anyway. So if you really think about it, this book kind of does have Storm coming off as an asshole and impatient, but I don't know, whatever. It's an X-Men book, of course. And then, so we have 3 people. We have Magic already had her sword. She didn't have to do shit. Logan got his, and now Storm has her. And I guess, you put your thing in Rockslide's corpse and you just stand there. Like, Storm gets there and Logan and Magic are just sitting there. And like, has Magic been sitting there 8 hours? Are they going to sit there 3 days in a row? And like, I don't know what happens if someone fails on their mission to get their sword. This story, and I'm assuming that, it wouldn't follow up or anything. So Wolverine gets 2 chapters and Storm gets 1, kind of dumb. But this was stronger than the Wolverine story, in my opinion. The storytelling was clearer. It fit in 1 issue. It didn't need 2 issues. The dialogue, especially between Storm and Shuri, was really great, digging into the whole status quo on both sides, leaning on both continuity and lore. This was pretty solid. And I went into it confused, like, oh, VDL is writing this book and not Jerry Duggan. But this was actually pretty good. Probably the best X-Men related issue I've read, I don't know, since a while, since I enjoyed one of the Hickman issues.
So do I need to jump back on and catch up? It looks like you're continuing on.
I mean, if you're a big fan of Black Panther or Storm, you should pick out this issue separately, individually.
I mean, I've told you, if there's something really cool and badass, let me know and I'll jump right back on board. But it looks, for now, it seems, I'll keep, tangentially checking in or like, flipping through just to see, what's going on. But it's our last book of the regular rundown before the retro. And boy, was this one a doozy. Was Snake Eyes Deadgame #2. And this is our, Rob Liefeld and Chad Bowers on, the story here, and then Rob Liefeld on art with Adelso Corona. And the second issue of this was delayed I guess I don't know if it was because of the pandemic or art wasn't done or scripts wasn't done. I'm not sure on that, but it's out now, and we did read the first one, and we came away liking it. But I ended up liking it more so for like, all right, this is fun and a novelty. I don't know how long the goodwill is going to last, and I'm going to come out right on the back and say, all right, I'm done. I've had enough. Snake Eyes and Scarlet are in the jungle on the trail of the Deadgame and Kurigan as they're attacked and knocked out, and then Snake Eyes is fighting someone claiming to be his sister and like was his master after leaving the Arakashikage dojo. We see Storm Shadow like come in to Scarlet's aid, and then Snake Eyes wakes up in some stupid new red suit, and he's thrown off a mountain by Kurigan and facing a giant snake. This is a disjointed, nonsensical mess, in like Scarlet's narrations all over the place, saying like it's awkward that she's hanging out with Snake Eyes, even though like they've been key partners in GI Joe history. Unless I've missed something more clear, I don't know what this is, but that goodwill's gone. The art takes a lot bigger hit now. Swords are just like changing size and shape in every other panel on the same page. So it's like all the criticisms of Liefeld come in this second issue. All right, I'm done. The novelty's worn off.
Yeah, he goes full Liefeld here. I don't know if this is what some of these characters look like regularly. I don't know anything about G.I. Joe, or if he's doing new designs for them. I swore we read number 2 already. It's kind of crazy because I feel like number 1 was definitely pre-shutdown. But I'm glad that I'm not continuing either, but I'm glad I read this issue, or quote unquote read this issue, because things are really ramped up. It's just funny because this does look, if you don't look at the logos on people's shoulders or wherever they are, this looks like it could be, like a 1999, 2002 era Rob Liefeld. You get the chicks in the short skirts. Everyone has like 2 giant swords. It's hilarious, and I love it on some level. But even on that, the art looked definitely rougher here than in the first issue. I don't remember if he inked himself in the first issue. He has someone inking him here. So that's a little disappointing. But I don't know. It's half fun to flip through.
I mean, you're a big Liefeld fan, so like, yeah, but like I lose it after this. I'm just like, all right, I've had my fill. I'm ready to read something else.
Well, half ironic. But I thought the first issue had a lot more promise than this one. The art was a lot more refined. And it's the similar kind of trajectory of Major X when I was following that way back. It's like, he starts off the first issue, he puts all his effort in, and maybe, hopefully, ideally, he's inking himself. And, it's got just a little bit of what you're laughing at, but a little bit of some solid storytelling and stuff like that, some weird panel layouts. And then I don't know what the deal is, but then it's like, Snake Eyes number 3, is he going to have 2 inkers and then he's going to have 3? I don't know. But that's not the only reason I'm not continuing with this.
Right.
But I'm glad I read these 2 issues. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I could have just done one and done, but I had to just I had to peek at number 2. But Dan, we'll welcome him back to the show. He's been away for a while. He went on a hike. He went on a run. I don't know what he did, but he's back now for the retro book.
Yeah, I just went for a nice jog, a brisk jog around the development at midnight. So why not? Anyway, our retro issue this week comes from December 2009. I was a freshman in high school. Wow, that's really long ago. With DC, with Brave and the Bold number 28, written by J. Michael Straczynski. I knew I was going to screw it up. With art by Jesus Saiz. I think that's how you say his last name. So anyway, in this story, it's a Flash story. We have Flash show up in Belgium to help this scientist with a laser beam, because what scientist doesn't have a laser beam? And they are testing it out to see the properties of light And the scientist is basically just like, hey, run alongside this beam and let's see if you can track stuff on it. So as Flash starts running along this beam, he actually gets sucked into it through some wacky science, loophole bullshit. And he ends up in a wintry forest, obviously in Belgium. He didn't travel through space, just time. And he eventually finds out that he went back to the time of the Battle of the Bulge. So we're back in the 1940s, which is kind of cool. And he actually has a broken leg or like a sprained leg or something. And he fights off some German soldiers through like his hands. Like he kind of moves his hands really quickly and he throws like snowballs at him, I guess. And he's eventually captured by the Blackhawk, who thinks he's an imposter of the Jay Garrick Flash, which I thought was a pretty cool little Easter egg that they kind of threw in there, because he asked him like, "I'm the Flash," and he's like, "I know the Flash," and he wears a silver bucket on head, like a bucket helmet on his head or whatever. And I thought that was kind of cool. So they talk back and forth at a cabin, and they kind of verify that Flash is from the future by asking him about the Manhattan Project, which nobody really knows at the time. Obviously, that's the atom bomb construction design that was going on with America that no one really knew about. So they're kind of talking about this, and as they are talking in this cabin, they are ambushed by Germans, and one of the Blackhawks gives Flash a gun, and Flash kind of hesitates, and instead he starts throwing bricks at the Germans, which pisses off the Blackhawk because they're like, why are you throwing bricks at people? We need to be killing them, not hurting them. And they then make their way to the town of Bastogne, I think is what it is, where Flash actually puts on an American soldier uniform. And it's not really clearly shown. I'm assuming this is what it is, but Flash just comes to terms with having to kill Germans. So we get I think we get a 1-page spread of him doing warlike things. We don't actually see him. I don't think we see him shooting anyone, but it's heavily implied that Flash killed Germans back in the 1940s, guys. So stop the presses. Yeah, so he helps them battle, and then once his leg heals, he gets ready to leave, kind of go back to the future. Back to the future. I guess he figures out a way to open up the wormhole again, because that's plot convenience for you. And the Blackhawks approach him and ask him if they win, to which Flash replies that they do win the battle, although it's not the war to end all wars. And I think Barry needs to get a little education on time travel movies, because you don't tell past people about what the future holds. That's not how it works. That affects the future. But he ends up reappearing in the present day with the scientist and realizing he was only gone for a second. So this whole time he was back in the 1940s, it was weeks on end. And the scientist runs off to note his discovery with much enthusiasm. Flash looks over at the graves of the soldiers who gave their lives in World War II Belgium. So really, really great story here. I was really interested in it from beginning to end. I thought the art was really on point here as well by Jesus. I thought that was a pretty good touch as well. But I think Flash is probably one of my top 3 or 4 characters from DC that I'm interested in reading at some point. I do have some stuff collected already, but this is a really great story, really fun. Again, the only gripe I have is Barry doesn't know how time travel works and shouldn't be talking about future events to people in the past. So what did you guys think?
Well, better this than, Barry, completely ruining the DC universe with his antics in Flashpoint. But I mean, listen, Barry's not the smartest person when it comes to time travel, but this is really fun. I didn't think this is exactly what this was going to be. Thinking the Blackhawks and the Flash, how is this going to be made to work? And we're going to have a time travel shenanigans. That makes fun sense for it. And then placing them in the Battle of Bastogne is kind of a neat thing. Though I associate the Blackhawks more with plane fights, as they all have planes, right, Vince? So seeing them as ground forces is a little bit different. But I do like the fact that his leg's broken in 2 places, so he's got no choice but to stick with them, and he's got to nurse himself back to health before he's able to like find a way back to the right time period. But no, this is fun. The art reminds me a little bit of Steve Dillon in some places. Jesus' art definitely has changed in different aspects over time. I think, not to steal from Vince, but I prefer his art back in this period too, to what it is now. I think it does look like, it just looks like shinier. This looks just more like fine on the line work and the edges. But no, this is really fun, and this is the second time we've read an issue from the JMS run on Brave and the Bold before he eventually takes over Superman and Wonder Woman when he comes over from DC after leaving Thor. So it's a really fun run. I think this all we might have mentioned it last time we looked at this, but all of these stories are collected in one trade. So it's pretty cheap. So I think it's just like World's Greatest Team Ups, Brave and the Bold, or something like that. Just search JMS Brave and the Bold and you'll find it. But no, if you find that trade, it's a pretty fun one and a lot of crazy different team ups. And I'm probably repeating myself here, but you get fun ones like the Atom and the Joker, Batman, and Dial H for Hero, I think was the first issue we did. So this is really fun team ups and pretty great art for Brave and the Bold, which is what you want out of a book like this, which is just at the end of the day a team up book.
Yeah, the Blackhawks have planes, but they're just like basically just super soldiers. They do everything. And they're also from different countries, so just don't think too hard about what their actual rules are supposed to be and everything like that. I like the premise of a Flash story where his leg or both, whatever, get injured. It allows for, number one, it allows for us to see more creative use of his powers. And then obviously with time travel here, that's, how he ends up stuck. And that's a really, clever conceit of that. And you see him like using his arms to like throw snow, and then he throws bricks and stuff like that. And on top of that, I like the idea of Barry getting stuck in periods of time for extended periods, and he has to adapt to the time, because, they mentioned Jay Garrick, so like, I don't know why he couldn't just keep on his uniform. He puts the uniform above it for the, metaphorical reason when he becomes a soldier. And that's the big thing here. I do prefer how JMS doesn't show us him killing someone. Like, it's not like we get some panel where like Barry has a gun to like a soldier's head and like then it's like a black panel or something. Like, you could get gratuitous with it. That's good at least. But the big question here is this kill rule. For what it's worth, Barry has technically killed people before. He killed Professor Zoom after Professor Zoom killed his wife. But still, I don't know. Especially if you're a big Flash fan, this could be a very contentious issue. I like Mike said, I like this era of Jesus Say's, or however you say his name, his art here. Nowadays, it has a certain texture and like a sheen to it. I don't know how to describe it. Some of it maybe he's worked with a certain colorist a ton over the past decade, but I honestly, I don't even like his art nowadays. I remember he was the initial artist on the Steve Rogers Captain America series with Nick Spencer, obviously the first issue with the infamous final page. But like, I looked at that book and especially like there were already some weird things that were bound to have people talking about his art, because that's when, and still the case, I guess, you guys can confirm, that's like when Sharon was really old, and his style, especially like trying to depict an old person, I thought it just looked bad. And then I'm just going to throw out my joke here, because this is now a joke with Dan, that he's not very familiar with the Blackhawks. Nope. But this is a pretty fun portrayal of the Blackhawks in a one-off appearance. You get the gist of what they are, and they come off pretty cool. But as far as Dan not knowing characters, what about the next issue of this series, which features Brother Power the Geek?
The heck?
I'll say my only gripe with the art was the Flash's mask. Barry doesn't have white eye slits. That's Wally. Barry has white eye slits on his mask. So, get it right. It's different. That'd be my only gripe. But other than that, it was a fun one.
Yeah.
I think Jesus Say's may have been one of the artists at the very, very end of the Wally run. So he may have gotten confused due to that.
Well, it's weird when once Johns gets in there, the costume changes again, and he loses the white eye slits, and it looks more like Barry's costume. So and that's when the true confusion sets in. But no, this was a fun one. It's when Dan gets a DC book roll on the random number generator, it's always kind of fun because you don't know what he's going to choose. It's either going to be Batman or something completely different, and this time he went something completely different. But we did look at it, looking at what were the options of books in December of 2009 from DC, and we did narrow it down. It was either between this or Tony Daniel's first issue on Batman. So I think this would have made for either or would have been a fine choice for this week. But as we wrap up, it's time for picks of the week, gentlemen. Vincent, what are you doing first?
I'm going to give it to Firepower.
Firepower? Dan, do I need to ask you?
Nope. You know.
I'm giving mine to Firepower too. It's another repeat. But like there were contentions here. Like I liked Spider-Man, I liked Black Widow, I like DCeased, but when the book is that high above everyone else, that's how it goes. I would have Thor was probably in my running this week. There were a lot of good books for me this week, but that's how the cookie crumbles as we end the show. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe on the channel. Pick of the week review will be out whenever I get that edited. And wear a mask, wash your hands. Anything else, keep staying safe and doing what the heroes do. I got nothing else for this week other than continue to be excellent to one another and stay safe out there.